The night was quiet, the seats of a sold-out wrestling arena packed to the rafters, fans roaring for the action that was about to unfold. Spotlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the ring in the center of the stadium. Typically, such an evening would revolve around the scripted matches, grand entrances, flamboyant costume changes, and dramatic finishes. Yet on this particular night, a wave of tension swept through the stands, hinting at an unplanned confrontation. Backstage, Dwayne Johnson was prepping for a routine appearance. Renowned for his unwavering on-screen bravado, high-octane energy, and motivational catchphrases, Dwayne was the face of the wrestling circuit. Dressing in black ring gear, he tightened his wrist tape, running through his usual mental pep talk. Go out there, give them a show, inspire them. He had no clue that beyond the choreographed bouts, a threat lurked, ready to disrupt the entire evening. Meanwhile, the streets outside the colossal Global Wrestling Showcase Arena were unusually still. Until, that is, the roar of a dozen motorcycle engines shattered the silence. Clad in matching black leather jackets and sporting an emblem of a snarling wolf's head, the gang known as the Twilight Reapers rumbled into the parking lot. At their head was a tall, imposing figure with a deep scar slashed across his brow, Blaze, the infamous leader. For years, the Twilight Reapers' name was whispered in bar brawls and shady deals across the region, their presence often heralding trouble. Under the flickering lampposts, the gang parked, dismounted, and spread out. Late arriving fans, eager to catch the main event, scurried away from the menacing group. Blaze eyed a massive billboard showing Dwayne Johnson, arms raised, a champion's belt around his waist. A half-smile that was more a sneer tugged at Blaze's lips. He recalled with burning clarity the humiliating moment nearly a decade ago when he first crossed paths with Dwayne in a promotional stunt gone awry. Blaze left battered, publicly laughed at, while Dwayne stood tall under the spotlight. That public mockery had festered in him ever since, turning into an unquenchable grudge. Tonight, Blaze intended to settle the score. With his gang behind him, he would upend the show, embarrass Dwayne in front of his beloved fans, and exact a vengeance he believed was long overdue. Inside, the matches were underway, each more dazzling than the last. Fans cheered, clapped thunderously whenever a wrestler pinned an opponent. Some spectators suspected a storyline twist might be coming. After all, wrestling thrives on unexpected angles. But none foresaw how real and brutal that night's twist would be. Toward the upper bleachers sat a 12-year-old boy named Noah, decked out in neon wristbands, wearing a t-shirt emblazoned with Dwayne Johnson's smiling face. Noah's father, Mr. Romero, sipped on soda quietly, occasionally grinning at his son's excitement. This was supposed to be a grand birthday treat for Noah, his first live wrestling event, a chance to see his hero, The Rock, in action. Noah had no idea that by the night's end, he'd witness a genuine battle for safety rather than the typical performance. Backstage, Dwayne concluded a quick meeting with the show's coordinator, who ran through the segment schedule. Dwayne had that sixth sense telling him something was off, but he attributed it to adrenaline or standard show jitters. His role tonight involved cutting a short motivational promo in the ring, then possibly interfering in a friendly face-off. Business as usual. Yet that unsettled feeling gnawed at him. He resolved to remain extra alert. Simultaneously, a staff member dashed down a corridor with an anxious expression. Approaching Dwayne, she half-whispered about a suspicious group of bikers brandishing questionable backstage passes. Security had let them slip inside under the assumption it was an approved cameo. The staffer admitted, "I'm not sure they're here for the right reasons." Dwayne frowned. Security lapses were rare at big-time wrestling events, but mistakes happened. He made a mental note to watch his back. What no one realized was that the Twilight Reapers, led by Blaze, had navigated the labyrinth of halls behind the curtain. Instead of an all-out assault, they planned to strike surgically at the moment of maximum shock. Blaze's instructions to his men were clear. Spread out, find Johnson, signal me when you have him cornered. The gang members melted into the backstage chaos, each hoping to deliver the final blow that Blaze desired. Inside the arena, the second match of the evening wrapped up to thunderous applause. The ring announcer took center stage, psyching up the crowd for the next highlight. Cameras panned across the stands, capturing signs proclaiming, "Never give up," and "We love you, DJ." Meanwhile, the murmur of thousands of voices merged into a single droning hum. Fans hopped up to grab a snack before the main event. Among them was the boy Noah, nagging his father for a souvenir foam hand. Mr. Romero chuckled, indulging his son's wish. Elsewhere, behind the scenes, Dwayne paced in the hallway, hearing the echo of fans calling his name. He flashed back to that earlier tip about the suspicious bikers. Could it be my old foe? He wondered. Dwayne recalled faint glimpses of that humiliating match a decade prior, where he laid out a certain braggart on live TV. At the time, it was just another storyline cameo to amuse the crowd. He never imagined the man, named Blaze, had held on to such a vendetta. But if that rumor was true, it might all be culminating tonight. The overhead speakers blared a welcome for the next match. Dwayne shook off the thought. He had a live crowd expecting entertainment, not a real brawl. Taking a deep breath, he stepped toward the gorilla position, the final zone before entering the ring. Pyrotechnics flared, and the crowd's roar swelled. Then it happened, a sudden shift in the atmosphere. Security earpieces buzzed with scrambled chatter, and a few stagehands scurried by, wide-eyed. "Something's going on at the ramp," one hissed. The ring announcers seated at their commentary table stuttered over their lines as backstage lights flickered ominously. The fans near the barricades sensed the disruption, turning toward the ramp with curious trepidation. Dwayne halted short of stepping onto the stage. Peering from behind the curtain, he glimpsed a cluster of dark figures forcing their way through ringside security. He recognized the patch on their leather vests, the snarling wolf's head. The Twilight Reapers had arrived. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. Down the ramp came Blaze in the flesh, a sneer twisting his scarred face. Two of his men followed, each gripping crude metal rods, pushing away the startled ring crew. The crowd, unsure if this was part of the show, half cheered, half watched in confusion. The ring announcers fumbled, trying to keep up their usual patter but losing confidence. Folks, I don't think this is on the script," one of them ventured. Standing in the ring, a lesser-known wrestler named Shane Omega had been scheduled to do a short comedic spot. But upon seeing the menacing bikers approach, Shane froze, microphone dropping from his hand. Blaze ignored him, shouting to the audience in a voice that dripped with mockery. "Where's your big hero, Dwayne Johnson? Let's see if he's as tough as he says." The entire arena fell into an uneasy hush. Some fans, enthralled by the possibility of an unscripted confrontation, started chanting, "Dwayne! Dwayne!" as if they could summon him like a hero in an old legend. Behind the stage's parted curtains, Dwayne's jaw clenched. He realized ignoring them wasn't an option. Ignoring them might risk fans getting hurt. So he stepped into the spotlight. Thunderous cheers erupted the instant he emerged, though the tension was clear on his face. This wasn't the typical strut-laden entrance. He marched with purpose, adrenaline spiking with each step. Blaze locked eyes with him, lips peeling back in a cruel grin. "Finally," he muttered. The ring air practically crackled with anticipation. Cameras flashed from every side, fans whipped out phones, and the atmosphere was electric beyond any standard storyline. The Reapers parted, letting Blaze step forward, chain in hand. The chain glinted under the overhead lights, swaying ominously as he tested its weight. In the stands, Noah gasped, tugging on his father's shirt. "Dad, is this real? It doesn't look scripted." Mr. Romero, face pale, simply responded, "It sure doesn't," placing a protective arm around his son. Over at the commentary table, the announcers had dropped their usual comedic banter, voices tight with concern. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is extremely unusual. We don't know who these men are or how they got in, but it appears they're here to challenge Dwayne Johnson." "For real," another exclaimed. "Security has to do something." The crowd bristled, half wanting a show, half worried for their safety. Dwayne reached the ring apron, scanning the ring for any traps. He recognized that if he climbed inside, he'd be stepping into an unsanctioned fight. But leaving the fans at the mercy of these men wasn't an option. Summoning the mic from a stagehand, he brought it to his lips. "Blaze, you want me? I'm right here. But you'd better not drag these innocent people into your vendetta." Blaze's eyes sparkled with malevolent glee. Too late for that, Johnson. This is payback. You humiliated me once. Let's see if you can do it again, in front of all these sheep. The hush was deafening. Fans, expecting a typical hype-laden entrance, realized they were witnessing raw tension. Dwayne hopped onto the ring apron and slid between the ropes, never letting his gaze leave Blaze. The other Twilight Reapers circled around the ring's edges, intimidation in their stances. Backstage officials scrambled. One producer, short of breath, waved at security guards, urging them to intervene. But the guards who tried got blocked or shoved by the Reapers stationed near the entrance ramp. Meanwhile, the ring announcers whispered to each other, "This is not in the script, it's real." In the ring center, Blaze and Dwayne stood face to face, the chain in Blaze's hand, a glaring symbol of menace. "All these years you lived off that moment, thinking you broke me," Blaze said, voice dripping venom. "But you never saw what it did to me. Now I'm returning the favor." Dwayne didn't blink. "I never tried to break you back then. It was just a wrestling cameo. You lost, we parted ways. If you carried that resentment this long, you're about to regret it." Blaze's glare intensified. He flicked his chain, the metallic links rattling. "Talk is cheap." Then, with no warning, he swung the chain at Dwayne's midsection. Reflexes honed by years of physical ring prowess kicked in. Dwayne sidestepped, catching a portion of the chain near the handle, bracing to prevent a second swing. The crowd exploded in screams, some leaping to their feet. In the stands, a frantic Noah asked, "Why isn't security stopping this?" Mr. Romero could only grip his son's shoulder, eyes glued to the ring. The tension was at a fever pitch. Seizing the moment, Dwayne tried to twist the chain from Blaze's grip, but a second Reaper hopped onto the apron, distracting him. The big man turned to confront this new threat, letting Blaze yank the chain free. Suddenly, the ring was a chaotic swirl of action. Another Reaper slid in with a steel baton raised. Dwayne spun, delivering a fierce elbow that knocked the baton away. The baton clattered to the mat, and the Reaper stumbled back. Blaze took the opening, launching a chain strike at Dwayne's back. The heavy links bit into Dwayne's muscles, eliciting a sharp grunt of pain. Gritting his teeth, he whirled around with a savage left hook that connected with Blaze's jaw, sending the gang leader staggering. The fans roared in a mixture of alarm and excitement. All illusions of a staged wrestling storyline vanished. Everyone saw it in the rawness of each blow, the uncoordinated movements of the invaders, the lack of typical ring referees making official gestures. This was authentic violence. Cameras flashed, dozens of phones recording. The ring announcers had dropped any attempt at show commentary, one of them exclaiming, "This is an actual assault, folks. This is not part of the event." Some spectators scrambled up the aisle, seeking safety in the concourse. Others in the front row pressed forward, enthralled by the real drama unfolding. Meanwhile, more wrestlers backstage realized the seriousness and rushed out to try to hold back the other Reapers. Dwayne in the ring, though, was left with only minimal help, a handful of staff who tried to keep the rest of the gang from swarming him at once. In that swirl of chaos, Noah found himself leaning across the barricade, heart pounding like never before. He'd only seen Dwayne in scripted matches, delivering entertaining lines and finishing moves. Now he witnessed his idol truly fighting for personal safety, possibly for his life. Mr. Romero gently tried to pull Noah back, worried the boy might get caught in a stampede if the crowd surged. Meanwhile, in the ring, Dwayne relentlessly fought off another chain strike. Blaze's men tried cornering him, but he used the ring's ropes and corners to his advantage, evading their pincer moves. A Reaper wearing a leather vest and a mohawk swung a piece of piping at Dwayne's legs. Dwayne hopped back, then hammered a stiff forearm that dropped the mohawk to the canvas. The fans roared, adrenaline fueling them as they recognized the reality behind each punishing blow. Blaze, gathering himself, spat blood from a cut lip. "I've dreamt about this day," he growled, stepping near the ring center, chain coiled again. "You made me a laughingstock. Now I'll make you beg." Dwayne coughed, chest heaving from repeated hits, but defiance shone in his eyes. "You talk too much." Rushing forward, Dwayne sidestepped Blaze's chain lash and delivered a resounding back elbow. The chain fell from Blaze's grip. The ring shook under the collision, and a mass of camera lights from phones illuminated the spectacle. Outside the ring, security staff pinned two Reapers, while a third battered a guard near the ramp. The rest of the crowd parted, uncertain whether more gang members lurked among them. Some fans prayed the police would arrive soon. The ring announcers near the commentary table said next to nothing, except occasional gasps and exclamations. This was beyond their experience, an actual infiltration, a violent real-life feud overshadowing any planned storyline. Then help emerged from backstage. A cluster of wrestlers, including Roy Stone and Jay Sparks, dashed out, tackling Reapers, who tried to climb into the ring. The scene resembled a bar brawl transplanted into a wrestling show, only far more dangerous. Dwayne glimpsed them from the corner of his eye, silently grateful he wasn't entirely alone in this. Blaze, refusing to surrender, whipped out a short knife from his boot, brandishing it in a final attempt to gain the upper hand. A hush fell across the stadium as the blade glinted ominously. Even the raucous cheers died, replaced by a collective intake of breath. Noah's eyes widened, and Mr. Romero muttered, "Oh, God!" Dwayne recognized the escalation. A chain was brutal enough, but a knife turned the encounter lethal. Each beat of his pulse hammered in his ears as he readied for the next charge. One miscalculation could cost him everything. Blaze snarled, flinging a mocking grin at Dwayne, then lunged with the blade in a savage arc. The knife's slash came within inches of Dwayne's abdomen, prompting him to pivot sharply. The crowd gasped en masse, hundreds of anxious voices merging into one. Blaze reversed his grip, preparing another stab, but Dwayne struck with lightning speed. He pinned Blaze's wrist, forcing the blade away from his body. The two men locked eyes for a tense heartbeat, Blaze's raw hatred meeting Dwayne's steeled resolve. Time seemed to slow. High in the stands, fans gripped their seats. Near ringside, some parents shielded their children's faces. The wrestling cameras, typically used to capturing choreographed performances, now broadcast something entirely real to the massive jumbotron overhead. Even the sports entertainment commentary had given way to silent shock, with only the faint ring of metal and the roars of the audience echoing. Dwayne let out a guttural exhale, summoning every ounce of strength. With a swift pivot of his hips, he twisted Blaze's wrist, disarming him. The knife clattered to the mat. Then, hooking an arm around the gang leader's chest, Dwayne heaved him off his feet and slammed him down with a spine-shaking impact, reminiscent of a finishing move, but delivered with genuine, unstoppable force. Blaze hit the canvas, breath forced from his lungs, arms splayed wide. For a moment, everything froze. The ring's center spotlights illuminated them, the unstoppable star and the battered biker who had come thirsting for revenge. A single second passed like an eternity as the crowd collectively exhaled. Then the arena exploded in cheers and applause. Some fans cried tears of relief. Others jumped with euphoria. But even as Dwayne pinned Blaze down, he glanced around to see if any Reapers remained to strike. Near the ring steps, Roy Stone and Jay Sparks subdued a last, flailing Reaper, while half a dozen security personnel had corralled the others. The official referees guided the battered troublemakers out of the ring area, arms pinned behind their backs, some spitting curses. The entire confrontation had lasted mere minutes, but it felt like an epic war. Noah and Mr. Romero stood in awe front row. The father slowly lifted a trembling hand to clap, joined by 1,000 others, until the whole stadium thundered with adulation. This was no script. This was authentic bravery. The unstoppable champion they admired had once again proven unstoppable, but in a way that transcended storylines. Dante's eyes shone with admiration that went beyond hero worship. He had witnessed the real measure of Dwayne Johnson. Breathing heavily, Dwayne signaled to the security staff. 2 officers hopped the barricade, sliding into the ring. Dwayne released Blaze, who coughed and cursed as the officers handcuffed him. The stadium cameras and cell phones recorded every second as the policeman read him his rights over the stadium loudspeakers. The rest of the Reapers were similarly rounded up. One by one, their rage had turned to futile cursing, no match for an entire world that had seen them fail. In the ring, Dwayne finally stood, retrieving a microphone from the trembling ring announcer. He steadied himself, voice still laced with adrenaline, and addressed the sea of wide-eyed fans. Sometimes, he said hoarsely, real life crashes into our show. But we don't back down, do we? The roar from tens of thousands of throats was deafening, an affirmation that soared through the rafters. As the dust settled, Dwayne allowed a half smile to cross his face, though exhaustion pulled heavily on his limbs. The audience erupted into a spontaneous chant. "Thank you, Dwayne!" echoed through the arena. Standing near the ring ropes, he looked at the battered Blaze, still cursing while being dragged away by uniformed officers. Their leader subdued, the rest of the Twilight Reapers lost all appetite for continuing. Security staff forcibly escorted them backstage, where more police waited with zip ties and paddy wagons. At ringside, the hush of tension gave way to exuberant relief. Parents guided their children back to seats, whispering explanations or words of comfort. Some fans still trembled from adrenaline, while others swapped excited commentary. "Did you see that takedown? He actually fought them off for real!" The ring announcers valiantly tried to reassert normalcy, but the entire dynamic of the show had changed. Noah and Mr. Romero pressed closer to the barricade. The boy's face shone with raw emotion. He'd adored Dwayne Johnson as a performer, but now he'd seen a new dimension. "Dad," Noah murmured, "he's a real hero." Mr. Romero nodded silently, patting his son's shoulder. Up at the commentary table, the lead announcer cleared his throat. "Folks, we're going to take a brief intermission while security and law enforcement handle the aftermath. We appreciate your patience." The lights dimmed somewhat, prompting fans to settle down or head to the concession stands for a break. In the ring, a cluster of wrestlers Dwayne considered colleagues gathered. They exchanged handshakes and slaps on the back. Tony Biggs, Jay Sparks, and Ray Storm, who had fended off other Reapers, checked on Dwayne's condition. "You good, man?" Roy Stone asked, spotting a bruise forming on Dwayne's left arm. "We can get the medics if you need." Dwayne shook his head. "I'm fine. Scrapes maybe, but I'll live." His gaze scanned the stands for the boy who'd been cheering him on. He spotted Noah, who waved shyly from behind the barrier. The big man returned the wave with a nod, grateful the kid was unhurt. Promoter Mr. Connors rushed onto the stage, half-winded from the fiasco. He took the mic, his voice quivering with residual shock. "On behalf of everyone at the Global Wrestling Showcase, we want to thank Dwayne Johnson for stepping up tonight, though none of us expected a real invasion." A small laugh rippled through the crowd, more out of relief than amusement. "We apologize for the chaos. Rest assured, the rest of tonight's event will continue once law enforcement deems it safe." Cheers erupted anew. Dwayne raised an arm, acknowledging the applause, then hopped down from the ring. As he made his way up the ramp toward the backstage area, fans patted him on the shoulder, giving grateful thumbs up. For many, the spectacle they witnessed exceeded any storyline or pay-per-view main event. They had felt genuine fear, then watched their idol quell it. Once backstage, the adrenaline ebb left Dwayne's muscles trembling. A cluster of security officers and staff welcomed him with relieved pats on his back. The event coordinator nearly stammered, "We're so sorry. We had no idea the infiltration was like that." Dwayne just shook his head. "Don't blame yourselves. People like them always find cracks to slip through." On a bench, a paramedic insisted on checking his arms for bruises. Dwayne let her dab a cut near his elbow while he listened to updates. The Twilight Reapers were being booked. Local cops had the entire gang, including Blaze, in custody. Meanwhile, at ringside, the show was set to resume. The promoter, Mr. Connors, broadcast an official apology to the crowd, ensuring them they were safe to remain. Still, an uneasy hum lingered in the corridors, staffers exchanging uncertain glances. "Could there be more of them lurking?" a stagehand whispered to a guard. The guard shrugged, stating they'd do a thorough sweep. Dwayne took a moment to reflect, leaning against the cinder block wall, eyes closed. He was used to stage fights and battered bodies, but this real confrontation hammered home how quickly a night of entertainment could twist into genuine danger. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from an unknown number read, "This isn't over. We don't forgive." He exhaled, rubbed a hand across his face. The threat was direct, presumably from the Reapers. "So be it," he thought. He typed a curt reply. "Then keep coming. I'll still stand." Discarding the phone, he replayed the fight in the ring. Blaze's fury, the chain whistling inches from his torso. The savage takedown. A surge of pride mingled with relief. He glanced at the paramedic, who gave him a nod. "You're lucky, Mr. Johnson. Nothing broken, just bruises." He'd had far worse from normal wrestling stunts, ironically. Glimpsing a group of wrestlers whispering among themselves, he strode over. They parted, each offering words of respect or awe. Tony Biggs gave a thumbs up. "Man, that was insane. Don't know how you kept so cool." Dwayne forced a smile. "Had to. Couldn't let them stomp around hurting people." Jay Sparks, wearing a battered ring jacket, chimed in. "We'll be on guard next time." He paused. "But I hope there isn't a next time." Dwayne nodded in agreement. "Me too." The ephemeral nature of wrestling storylines contrasted sharply with the real stakes they all faced moments ago. The men parted ways, with Dwayne preparing to re-enter the ring in a scheduled segment. The fans, after that bizarre intermission, had resettled, ready to see their hero in an actual match, if the show was continuing. He owed them at least that sense of normalcy. Promoter Mr. Connors approached, swirling a half-empty water bottle in his hand. "We might pivot the rest of the show, skip some extraneous bits, but the crowd wants to see you, if you're up for it." Dwayne patted the paramedic's kit, signifying he was good to go. "I'll do it," he said. "Let's give them a finale." So in the aftermath of the infiltration, the show resumed with adjusted pacing. Dwayne performed a short, triumphant piece in the ring, bounding off the ropes, delivering a comedic promo for the fans, some levity to patch the tension. The crowd welcomed it, roaring each time he teased the earlier, unplanned cameo by some uninvited guests. The illusions of standard wrestling were intact again, though deep down, everyone recognized they'd witnessed something that soared beyond performance tonight. When the final bell rang and the show concluded, fans poured out of the arena into the late-night air, still electric with excitement. Many recounted how they'd come expecting flips and slams, only to find themselves part of a real incident. Dwayne Johnson defending the ring from a furious biker gang. Outside, uniformed police lights still flashed, finishing up the processing of the Twilight Reapers. Word spread that Blaze was among those carted off in handcuffs, his expression vengeful, swearing retribution. The crowd parted ways around the sight of black and white squad cars pulling out. Inside the now-dimmed arena, the ring crew hurried to dismantle the stage, while staff rummaged for gear. Dwayne methodically removed his wrist tape, tossing it into a nearby trash bin, mind still racing from the confrontation. He accepted a handshake from the promoter, who looked both relieved and exhausted. "That's a wrap, and hopefully the last we'll see of those goons," Mr. Connors said. Outside, near the barricades, Noah and Mr. Romero lingered, reluctant to leave. They hoped for a final chance to speak with Dwayne, to reassure themselves he was truly all right. A security guard nodded permission for them to wait by the backstage exit. Soon enough, Dwayne emerged, wearing a gray hoodie over his ring attire, shoulders slumped from fatigue. As soon as he spotted the father and son, he mustered a warm smile. Noah nearly vibrated with excitement. "That was so cool. Scary, but you were so brave," he exclaimed, eyes shining. Dwayne ruffled the boy's hair. "Thanks for the cheerleading, kid. Hearing your voice in that crowd gave me a boost." The father, Mr. Romero, added, "We really appreciate what you did. Not many would stand up so fiercely." Dwayne's eyes softened. "I only did what needed doing. Thank you for coming tonight and trusting me." While the staff closed up the arena's main doors behind them, Dwayne paused to scribble an autograph for Noah on a glossy event program. He scrawled a quick message: "Never stop believing in yourself, Dwayne J." The boy clutched it like a treasure. Then with a nod, Dwayne waved farewell, strolling off to the side lot where his car was parked. The father and son headed the opposite direction, father's arm around the boy, both quietly recounting the evening's surreal events. In the next few days, local and national headlines roared about the fiasco. Biker gang invades wrestling show. Dwayne Johnson fights back. Social media erupted, replays of real punches overshadowing any official storyline matches. Some cynics guessed it was staged, but those who witnessed it in person, like Noah, Mr. Romero, or the staff, insisted on the authenticity, recalling how each blow resonated with raw intent, how the panic tasted all too real. And though Blaze was in custody, the lingering question remained: was his vendetta truly ended? Days after the fiasco, Dwayne found himself pulled into a swirl of interviews. Major talk shows and sports channels demanded to hear the first-hand account, yet he declined most, offering only a brief statement. "I'm grateful no one got seriously hurt. Our fans deserve safety and a good time. My thanks to security and local law enforcement." Crisp, neutral, he refused to glorify the violence or feed the hype machine around it. Meanwhile, the Twilight Reapers faced a list of charges: assault, criminal trespassing, and weapons possession. Blaze, singled out for incitement, faced higher bail. But rumors flickered that he had connections with certain shady groups who might fund his release, fueling speculation he would soon return for more. This rumor overshadowed the relief that most of his gang were behind bars. Concerned fans bombarded Dwayne's social media with supportive messages. "Stay safe. We know you can handle them," or "We love you, champ." He offered small updates, mostly focusing on positivity and refusing to dwell on the negativity. At a subsequent wrestling event, this time in a smaller venue, Dwayne was greeted with a standing ovation. The ring announcers introduced him as the Unbreakable One, referencing his real-life feats. A comedic storyline played out where Dwayne teased the crowd, yet the undertone was serious. No one had forgotten the prior infiltration. Security presence doubled, Idaho checks at every door. The show ran smoothly, but lingering tension hung in the air. In the front row sat Noah and Mr. Romero once more, courtesy of special passes from the promoter, Mr. Connors. They'd been invited as a gesture of gratitude for their unwavering support. After the final match, Dwayne took the mic, referencing the fans' unwavering faith in him. "We might face tough times, but so long as we stand together, no gang or foe can break us," he declared. The crowd roared in solidarity, chanting his name. The father and son beamed from their seats. Still, under the bright lights and cheers, Dwayne's mind wandered to that lingering possibility. What if Blaze had outside help, or an out-of-state friend who wanted to continue the vendetta? He was no stranger to feuds in the wrestling world, but this was more than storyline heat. This was life-or-death obsession. Each day he scanned the news, half expecting to see an update on the Reapers' legal status. Would they remain locked up or slip away? One evening, while Dwayne trained at a local gym, his phone pinged with a text from a detective stationed at the city's precinct. The text read, "Blaze has posted bail. Watch your back." Dwayne ground his teeth, frustration prickling at him. The man was unstoppable in his pursuit of payback, apparently. Dwayne texted back a clipped, "Thanks for the heads up." He exhaled a deep breath, shifting the barbell's weight from his shoulders. The repetition of real danger weighed heavier than any physical load. If Blaze was out, he'd likely go into hiding or plan another surprise. Could Dwayne always be on guard? The question dogged him. If it was just himself, he could handle it. But what about events, fans, children like Noah? A few days later, it appeared as if Dwayne's worst fears would come true. A local philanthropic event was scheduled, celebrating youth sports at a well-lit open-air park. Families and kids planned to gather for games, free refreshments, and a short speech from Dwayne. The city had pumped this gathering up as a healing moment after the scare at the wrestling show. Organizers insisted on more thorough security, bag checks, a heavier police presence. Dwayne himself contacted additional private security, determined to avoid another fiasco. On the day of the event, the weather was mild, the late afternoon sun shimmering through tall trees. Booths had been set up around a makeshift stage, music drifting through portable speakers. The turnout was robust, parents pushing strollers, teens snapping selfies, local coaches praising their young athletes. Miss Hartley, the center's lead organizer, met Dwayne by the main tent, offering him a handshake. "I appreciate you coming after all that trouble. Everyone's excited to see you." Dwayne gave a reassuring nod. "I wouldn't let a handful of troublemakers scare me off from supporting these kids." He scanned the perimeter discreetly, spotting uniformed cops, event staff, and a handful of plainclothes watchers he recognized as part of his private detail. The memory of the Twilight Reapers crashing his ring lingered in his mind, fueling a cautious vigilance. Shortly before Dwayne was to speak, Noah and Mr. Romero arrived. Noah wore the same neon wristbands, practically bouncing with excitement. "Dwayne," he called, weaving through people to greet him. Dwayne leaned down, high-fiving the boy. "Hey, buddy, you ready for a calm day this time?" he teased with a grin. Noah beamed. "Yes, sir. Let's hope so." A hush of anticipation settled as Miss Hartley introduced Dwayne from a small stage. Applause swelled while he stepped up to the microphone. He paused, scanning the lively crowd, young soccer players, cheer squads, families with balloons. All looked joyful and unsuspecting. For a moment, Dwayne's tension thawed. He began speaking about grit, perseverance, and how each child's dream deserved unwavering dedication. The audience soaked up every word, but the Twilight Reapers, or what remained of them, were indeed in town. Freed on bail, Blaze had regrouped some loyal members. They might have parted ways with the bigger group, but they harbored the same devotion to Blaze's vendetta. Disguised among festival goers or lurking near side streets, they waited. Fearful the place would be too well guarded, their plan was subtler. Catch Dwayne alone after his speech, a precise ambush with minimal spectacle. Halfway through his talk, Dwayne glimpsed a shape moving behind the stage's curtain. He kept speaking, finishing a heartfelt anecdote about how, as a child, he overcame doubters. The crowd cheered, Miss Hartley smiled, the kids clapped. The next moment, a policeman near the stage tapped his earpiece and stepping backstage. Something was amiss. The policeman's posture signaled alarm. Dwayne discreetly tensed. Could it be? He found Miss Hartley's eyes and gave a slight nod, urging her to remain calm and keep the audience occupied. He ended his speech with, "Never give up on your dream," prompting roaring cheers. Then he stepped away from the mic, gesturing to Miss Hartley to take over. She smoothly thanked him, telling families the next activity was a mini soccer demonstration. Meanwhile, Dwayne edged behind the stage, guided by the policeman, bracing himself for the confrontation he dreaded yet expected. Behind the stage's modest curtain, the contrast was stark. Colorful decorations and laughter on one side, menacing shadows on the other. Elliot Miles, the private security consultant Dwayne had hired, rushed up, eyes tense. "We've spotted at least 2 men we believe to be Reapers, scoping the perimeter. Maybe more." He motioned for Dwayne to follow him around the backside of the stage area, where a chain-link fence separated the festival from a vacant lot. The policeman who had signaled Dwayne earlier stood there, poised. Beyond the fence in that vacant lot were 2 figures lurking. Men wearing dark hoodies with something metallic occasionally catching the setting sun's reflection. Elliot whispered, "We suspect they're waiting to corner you after the event. The rest might be stashed along that side road. You can slip out through the main entrance if you prefer. We can create a decoy." Dwayne inhaled. A big part of him wanted to avoid another fight, to keep families safe. But part of him also recognized that running from bullies wouldn't solve the problem. Blaze's remaining allies wouldn't relent. Maybe it was time to face them head-on, away from the festival crowd. "What if we go to them?" he suggested quietly. Elliot frowned. "That's dangerous. Could escalate. But I get it. If you want to keep them from pulling another infiltration stunt here, better meet them on our terms." Dwayne set his jaw, stepping quietly along the edge of the fence, scanning for an exit. A back gate led to an alley which opened to the vacant lot. Elliot signaled the policeman to radio for backup. "At least let the local cops know," Dwayne murmured, "but I'd prefer we handle it quietly if possible. No panic for the kids." At the festival's main stage, Miss Hartley strolled out, encouraging folks to engage in the next activity. Noah and Mr. Romero lingered near the front, glancing around for Dwayne, presumably to say a final goodbye. Meanwhile, the policeman guided Dwayne, Elliot, and a small group of plainclothes security around the stage's perimeter. Sure enough, crossing through the gate, they entered the deserted lot. The ground was gravel, dotted with old tires, crates, and patchy grass. The sun's last rays cast long shadows, making the figures near the fence appear spectral. Stepping forward, Dwayne spotted them. Blaze himself was not present, but 2 others, presumably top loyalists named Rogue and Reese by certain intel. They tensed upon seeing Dwayne approach, followed by a handful of security. "You want to settle something?" Dwayne called, voice calm but resonant. "We can talk, but I won't let you near that festival." Rogue, a stocky man with a shaved head, scowled. "We're done talking. Our boss is locked up thanks to you. We want payback." Reese, taller and wiry, brandished a lead pipe, tapping it against his palm. "Or is the big star too scared now?" His tone was mocking, but there was an underlying tremble. They recognized that Dwayne was more formidable than they'd anticipated. Elliot Miles and the policeman spread out behind Dwayne, ensuring the men couldn't circle around. Dwayne raised a hand, indicating he'd handle this. "Look," he said, "your boss got locked up because he attacked me and an entire arena. That was his choice, not mine. But you push this further, you'll end up joining him in jail." Rogue sneered. "We answer to no one but Blaze. He wants you to suffer." Without further ado, he lunged forward, a wild swing with a makeshift baton in hand. Dwayne sidestepped smoothly, hooking the man's arm and flipping him to the gravel. The man gasped as the baton flew from his grip. Reese tried to ambush from the side, brandishing the pipe overhead. Dwayne pivoted, intercepting Reese's forearm in mid-swing. The blow still glanced his shoulder, sending a jolt of pain coursing through him, but he stayed upright. With a quick jab to Reese's jaw, he forced the pipe free. Both men stumbled back, stunned by Dwayne's speed and technique. They likely expected an easy mugging, not a well-trained athlete who combined ring savvy with real-world grit. The policeman, seeing the assault, shouted, "Stop! Drop your weapons!" even though they were momentarily unarmed. Elliot moved to assist, but Dwayne waved him off, locking eyes with the panting Rogues. "Still want some? Or is that enough?" Rogue, ignoring reason, let out a guttural cry, charging again. Dwayne stepped in with a brutal knee to the gut, doubling the man over. He finished with a forearm to the back, sending Rogue sprawling face first in the gravel. Reese, seeing his partner flattened, tried to retreat, but the policeman and Elliot cornered him swiftly, each grabbing an arm and forcing him to the ground. Reese cursed and struggled, to no avail. The policeman breathed relief, pressing a knee on Reese's back to hold him. "Got him!" Elliot scooped up the discarded weapons, tossing them aside. Quiet resumed in the lot, broken only by the heavy breathing of the pinned bikers. Dwayne exhaled, rotating his shoulder to ease the sting. The policeman fished out cuffs, restraining both men. They spat threats, but their bravado rang hollow. With a quick phone call, backup arrived. 2 more patrol cars pulled up, red and blue lights dancing across the gravel. Officers hopped out, took statements, sealed the area with caution tape.